As we get further into job applications and some of the job search tactics, it's really important to educate everybody on applicant tracking systems or an applicant tracking system that most HR professionals will use. These things are made in order to filter out and organize through different stages of a pipeline all of the different applicants that are going to be applying. We've all seen jobs that have well over 100 applicants. There are many types of jobs that have thousands. And so it would not be humanly possible for an individual to review in a successful manner each and every single application. So what we have here is a number of applicant tracking system solutions or HR software that allows the HR person to basically receive all of these applications and work through them in a methodical way. These also are responsible for filtering out the majority of the people that apply that are not necessarily relevant for the job. Before we get too crazy far into all the different things that go into the job search, it's really important to understand how they actually work and the different workflows that are responsible. So let's first talk about the job opening being published. Let's go into that workflow. So the company has a need. Somebody has basically said, we need somebody for this particular type of function. They set aside a budget. They agree, yes, we can afford to pay that person. They agree it is a priority. It's something that we need to start doing right now. And the role is confirmed that, yes, we're going to go out and hire for this type of role. Then the hiring manager often will meet with an HR person and basically they'll stipulate onto what they're looking for. And it's HR's responsibility often to do a little research and then create a job description that fits what the hiring manager said they wanted in the next hire. The hiring manager and the HR person will sit together and they will have some type of conversation like, yeah, this works, this feels right. In smaller companies, it is often the hiring manager that is doing all of those things, but just bear with me, just so you understand. The role is then added to the applicant tracking system. So it is essentially published into that tool, and then it is eventually further published onto different job boards. Next, let's talk about how your application goes from the website that you apply on all the way through to being reviewed by HR. So you find a job on a job board, you review the ad, and then you apply. The applicant tracking system receives your application, and then it starts to do a CV parsing or a resume parsing. What it's looking for and matching is basically what has been put in there from the standpoint of, does the job description match this person's resume? This will often go alongside additional filters that are made to filter you out. So if you don't have these certain key phrases within your resume, you may not be the most relevant person for the job, and you may automatically be filtered to a lower level to the point that you're never actually reviewed by a human. In many cases, these are automated rejections that get sent out immediately, which is crazy frustrating. We've all been there. For those that are not automatically filtered out, HR then manually reviews the ones that look like they could be a decent fit for the job, and eventually they get to yours, and then they open up the CV along with the other application data. So the next stage of the process is the actual interview. So hopefully you're still following me here. The next stage of the process is, how do we get through the workflow of getting a real interview with the company and what happens during that process. So HR will normally send out an email. Sometimes it's a LinkedIn message and they schedule that first call. It's becoming more and more rare for people to actually do phone calls in that first interview. But the idea is this interview is passing kind of the kick the tire test or the sniff test. Do you sound like you would fit the role based off of their very narrow scope and understanding of the role? If yes, then your CV is sent to the hiring manager. The hiring manager then reviews your CV, and the hiring manager goes, yeah, this person looks pretty good. I'm happy to talk to them. HR then organizes a second call. That second call is then confirmed via calendar, and you have that second call with the first hiring manager that you're speaking to. If that hiring manager and you have a great conversation and they eventually say, yes, I think this person is a good candidate, they will either pass you on to another interview or they will require a test project. The test project is sent via the HR person. Now it's your turn to wow them with a test project. Often, this test project can be accompanied with an intelligence test or a personality test, but either way, you send it off, hopefully within the deadline. The test project is often then reviewed by the hiring manager, if not also the HR manager, but the hiring manager is the one that really checks it off and says yes. The HR person then sets up a third meeting. That third meeting is often with other people from the organization, not just the hiring manager, but somebody else within the organization. If that meeting goes well, there is an internal meeting where you are discussed. They'll talk about whether or not you are a good fit, whether or not your test project has met the expectations, whether they like you, a bunch of other variables that you can't possibly predict or know. After that internal meeting, it is decided whether or not they want to bring you in for one final interview with the decision maker, which is usually a CEO or the highest level person within your department. It really just depends. Otherwise, if it's a C-level role, there's a high likelihood that they'll interview you with other people, but let's just simplify it and say, great, they really like you, everything has gone well. HR will then send you an offer. It is on you to then review the offer, and I always encourage people to counter the offer with some form of negotiation because they are trying to get you for the cheapest possible amount that they can. They will then review that negotiation. And from there, it is either a contract sent or you go back and forth for a while until they basically go, okay, well, we're not going to be negotiating any further, so take it or leave it. You then sign the contract, they sign the contract, HR sends a welcome email, and then there is a future onboarding email that gets you into the organization within your start date. Every company has a slightly different way of doing this, but just so you have a high level understanding of the different workflows and the things that need to happen before you can actually get into your new job, that's what this is here for. Let's move on to a couple of different areas about the applicant tracking system using an example. This is a recent screenshot of BambooHR. It is a ATS or applicant tracking system tool, and you're looking at the pipeline. So in order for you to go from applied to hired, you have to pass these different stages. Again, there's nuance to this. Every company uses a slightly different pipeline or workflow, but first you will apply, then you interview, then they basically go through and sort out who they like, they make an offer, they put all their disqualified people immediately in here, and then they're eventually adding people to the hired section. This is a view of how most of the applicant tracking system tools work. Really quite simple. And of course, you could see how people would stay organized with this type of perspective. Another example from the employer's perspective is this is me. This is when I was hiring for, honestly, an internship and a front ender at that. So these are all of the different applications. So there were 40 non-reviewed resumes that ended up in here. From those, I shortlisted a total of 7, but I ended up sending out 36 rejections throughout that process, which is actually quite normal. Not everybody gets a rejection letter because you're inundated with so many applications. We had a total of 5 different interviews, and ultimately there was one person that ended up getting hired. This is really daunting for a lot of people to see because it's just crazy to me. A lot of people haven't been on the other side in order to understand, like, oh, I can often be a number on a spreadsheet. And it's super important that we stand out. And I want to show you how we do that in different ways a little further into the course. So from an insider's perspective, and again, external validation really helps, I've included this short video of a creator explaining how she has used applicant tracking systems in the past and how bad formatting can often screw people up. Incomplete applications gives you a lower score amongst other applicants, which is crazy, and late applications are often not viewed. So check this out, pause here, watch it real quick. Let's take a look at a couple of different applicant tracking system statistics. That's a mouthful. So guess the answers on these: the percentage of recruiters that use applicant tracking systems, the percentage of qualified candidates rejected by applicant tracking systems, and the percentage of resumes rejected before they even reach the hiring manager. Make your guesses. And here we are, 75% across the board. I question the legitimacy when everything's 75%, but it is what it is. This is really important to understand that you are often rejected without any fault of your own, even though you might be the right candidate for the job. It happens all the time to everybody. Don't let it get you down. Often there are lots of different ways around this, and I want to go into those further into the course. Keep watching, it gets better.